السلام عليكم جميعا. أنا دكتور محمد علاء، ودي محاضرتنا Introduction to Public Management. وده تاني أسبوع لينا من اللقاءات عبر الكمبيوتر. أتمنى حضراتكم تكونوا متابعين، وأتمنى إن زي ما بقول لو في أي مشاكل أو في أي أسئلة يا ريت تبعتوا لي إيميل، وهكون سعيد جدا برضو إن أنا أقعد معاكم على سكايب، سواء مع أي طالب بشكل شخصي أو مع مجموعة من الطلبة لو عايزين تناقشوا أي حاجة ليها علاقة بالورقة الختامية. نقطة سريعة بخصوص الورقة الختامية، أنا نزلت مجموعة مقترحات لأشخاص ومنظمات ممكن تتواصلوا معاهم لو عايزين تعملوا مقابلة شخصية مع حد في وزارة التخطيط، حد من المسؤولين عن الانتقال للعاصمة الإدارية. في برضو دبلوماسي في وزارة الخارجية وافق إن حضراتكم تقعدوا معاه وتقابلوه، طبعا فيرتشولي عن طريق سكايب أو غيره. فيا ريت تستفيدوا من المصادر دي. لكن لو حد فيكم بدأ الورقة بتاعته بالفعل، لو في فريق بدأوا الورقة وبدأوا التواصل مع منظمة معينة، يا ريت تكملوا معاها. أنا ما عنديش أي مشاكل، أنا بس حاولت إن أنا أساعد في موضوع الورقة الختامية. في نفس الوقت في ناس في طلبة منكم كان رأيهم إن ممكن الورقة تتلغي. أنا في رأيي إن الورقة دي خبرة إيجابية وخبرة مهمة بالنسبة لكم، وفرصة إنكم تتعرفوا على ناس. فأتمنى إنكم تستفيدوا من الفرصة دي، فرصة إنكم تتعرفوا على ناس بيشتغلوا في وزارة التخطيط، فرصة تتعرفوا على ناس بتشتغل في وزارة الخارجية، فرصة لإنكم تقابلوا ناس من مجلس الوزراء، وهتلاقوا الأسماء دي موجودة في القائمة اللي أنا اقترحتها. وبالفعل أنا تواصلت مع الناس دي، هم مرحبين إن فريق أو أكتر يتواصل معاهم ويعملوا انترفيو معاهم بخصوص شغلهم، سواء في مجلس الوزراء أو في وزارة التخطيط أو في وزارة الخارجية. النهاردة إن شاء الله هنتكلم عن أحد أهم المهام اللي بتطلع بيها أي إدارة سواء حكومية أو في القطاع الخاص، وهي وظيفة التخطيط. التخطيط للمستقبل، إزاي نحط خطط على أساسها نوجه طاقات المؤسسة أو نوجه طاقات المنظمة اللي احنا بنشتغل فيها. So the topic is strategic planning, or just planning period, which is a very important function or a very important task for any manager and for any management system within any organization. So I guess the first step is to define planning, or what is planning. As we said earlier, planning is about establishing long-term goals for the organization and short-term goals for the subunits within the organizations, and then integrate and then designing sort of short-term plans to integrate and coordinate the different work activities required to reach the strategic goal of the organization. This is a bit complicated, so let's take it step by step. First, you need to establish a strategic goal. So a strategic goal is basically a long-term goal. Maybe at least for the coming 3 years, maybe for the coming 5 years, or for the coming 10 years. This is what we mean by strategic goal. In our first class, when we met, this was actually a while ago, it was a face-to-face meeting, we spoke about, for example, Egypt National Vision 2030. What is Egypt National Vision 2030? It's a strategic plan. Why? Because basically the government of Egypt is saying, here's where we want to be within 10 years. It's 2020 now. Okay, how do we envision Egypt by 2030? We envision a diversified economy. We envision opportunities for everyone. We envision equality between men and women. We envision 7% growth rate, so on and so forth. So this is basically the strategic goal which is established by Egypt National Vision 2030. Any strategic goal is a long-term goal, which again, you need this goal to be ambitious. At the same time, you need it to be realistic. So basically, it's where you want to be in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. This is the strategic goal. And then after establishing the strategic goal, or after setting your strategic goal, your job is to create strategies for achieving your long-term goals and short-term goals. These strategies are basically steps that will help you achieve your goal, your strategic goal, and your shorter-term goals. So for example, one of the goals in Egypt National Vision 2030 is achieve a growth rate of 7% by 2030. Okay, so this is the strategic goal. What about the short-term plans? Well, the short-term plans can be work on attracting foreign direct investment, which would require reforming the legal system so that we can have more foreign direct investment attracted to Egypt. We need to reform education so that we have graduates who can contribute to economic growth, and so on and so forth. So basically establish your strategic goal. In this case, it's achieving 7% growth rate by 2030, and then develop plans and coordinate work activities to reach these goals. Usually, whenever we speak about planning, we're speaking about formal planning. So what is formal planning? Again, think about Egypt National Vision 2030. Think about any developmental goals established by the UN or the World Bank or something of that sort. Usually a formal plan is, number one, it's written, okay, so that everyone knows about it. It's shared by everyone within the organization. Also, formal planning requires establishing specific goals covering a specific time period. Again, whenever you decide on your goals, make sure that these goals have certain characteristics. First, they should be time bound. In other words, we can't say, okay, our purpose is to reach 7% growth rate. Okay, when, right? You can reach 7% growth rate in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. You have to be specific because, again, you want to be realistic. So you can't say, okay, I want to reach 7% growth rate this coming year. Doesn't make sense. But if you say in 5 years, I want to reach this goal, I think it's realistic. We can take the following steps to reach this goal. Well, now this makes sense. Okay, so formal planning, we're speaking about a written organization plan that everyone knows about, that is shared widely across the organization. We're also speaking about specific goals that have a specific time period. Okay, why do we have to plan? Why does it make sense to establish plans? Why is it important to have plans? Again, planning is one of the most important functions of management. It's a role that all managers have to play. Or at least it's a function that all managers have to work on. Why? Well, there are 4 key reasons why planning is very important. First, it provides direction. Think about it. If your organization doesn't have a plan, people are just working sort of haphazardly without any direction. However, if you have a plan, it provides direction. If there are differences between 2 managers, someone saying we should, go for project A, another manager saying, no, we should go for project B. Well, if you have a specific plan, then you know what your organization wants to achieve. You understand your priorities and you work towards achieving, the goals that have already been established. Without goals, you really don't have a clear direction. Second, it reduces uncertainty. Again, if you know where you are, if you know where you're heading, things just become clear in your mind. You can look ahead and anticipate change. Again, let's be honest. You can never be 100% certain about what's next. Again, think about the coronavirus. We had certain plans in Egypt, and I attended a few meetings where people were speaking about where we want to go, about economic reform, about different plans for the health sector, for the education sector, and so on and so forth. And then suddenly came the coronavirus. Who could have imagined such a thing would happen? Which means that our plans have been disrupted. Let's be honest. Do we anticipate the same growth rates this year as we had anticipated before? No. Earlier we said, this year we can grow at like 4 or 5% annual. We can achieve 4 or 5% annual growth rates. Now with coronavirus, do you think this is realistic? No, definitely not. However, planning does reduce uncertainty to an extent. Why? Because when you plan, one thing you have to keep in mind is, okay, try as much as possible to know what's next, what obstacles you'll find in the future, what positive support you can have in the future. Try to think about the threats and opportunities you have in your environment before making plans. However, you can predict only to a certain extent. So for example, when Egyptian economists and World Bank economists started speaking about growth rate in Egypt, and they said, okay, this year we're going to achieve 4 or 5% growth rate. Again, they had certain ideas about what threats can face the Egyptian economy. They didn't go as far as imagining the corona outbreak would happen. So they could never predict with certainty what will happen next, what threats might appear. However, when you plan, when you try to sort of scan the environment, I understand what might happen wrong, you're definitely reducing uncertainty. You can't eliminate uncertainty, but at least you try to reduce uncertainty. Second, or actually third, the third reason why planning is that important is because it minimizes waste and redundancy. Again, if you have a clear plan, or if you have a clear strategic goal and you have plans for each subunit within your organization, then you're avoiding duplication. If you avoid duplication, then again, you're avoiding waste. What happens when you avoid waste? You reach efficiency, right? So minimizing waste means that you're achieving efficiency. So again, if I know that my strategic goal is, okay, 7% growth rate, and then I can say, okay, here's what the health sector would do. Here's what the education sector would do. Here's what, you know, economic planners have to do, and so on and so forth. If I understand the roles that each subunit within my organization would have to do in order to achieve the strategic goal, then I'm minimizing waste because each subunit has very specific thing to do. In other words, if you have two units doing the same thing, then this is redundancy, this is duplication. If different subunits are just working to achieve their part towards the final big goal, then you're minimizing waste and minimizing redundancy. So this is one other reason why planning is a good thing. Second, it sets standards for, actually this is fourth, it sets standards for controlling. Again, think about it. What is controlling? Controlling is about, as we said, it's about monitoring the ongoing work. If there's any deviation between your goal and what you can actually see within the organization, then there's deviation. So the third step within control is correct. Do some corrective action. If people are working below standards, then make sure that they work, you know, up to the standards. If people are not performing that well, then you want to make, you know, you want to ask, why are people not doing that well, right? So controlling is about comparing actual performance to the goal, right? And again, when do you set your goals? In the planning stage, right? So planning is very important for controlling. As we said, we have four functions for managing or for management: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Planning is the first step for controlling because this is the stage where you set your goals. Okay, stages for strategic planning. Again, the very first step is to ask yourself, you're a manager of a certain organization. This organization can be the Ministry of Planning, it can be the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it can be the Faculty of Economics and Political Science, it can be a public hospital, it can be a private hospital, it can be an NGO like Risala or 57 or whatever. So the very first step in the strategic planning process is ask yourself, why am I here? That is, identify the organization's current mission, goals, and strategies. First, identify the mission. Why are we here? What's the purpose for our existence? The goals, what do we want to achieve? What products and services do we want to provide? At what quantities? At what quality? Again, these are your goals. And then your strategies, your plans for achieving these goals. So this is the first step. Identify your mission and the reason for your existence. The second step in planning is to do a SWOT analysis. Again, SWOT analysis is a very important term. Actually, in our live sessions, I was planning to make a breakout group. So basically give you some cases of like planning and goals you want to achieve. And then I would ask each group to draw a SWOT analysis or to make a SWOT analysis. Now it's a bit difficult to do such things, especially that now we're not really teaching online. This is just that I'm recording my class, but this is not online teaching. Online teaching would mean that we're actually meeting face-to-face, except that we're just online. Again, this was a bit of a surprise, what happened with COVID-19 and, you know, all the efforts to counter the spread of this virus. So I think we're doing great, and I think FEPS is doing great. However, since we're not meeting face-to-face, I asked my assistant, Dr. Sarah, to post these breakout groups for you. So please take a look at them. They might be helpful in the final exam. At the same time, they are part of the skills that I want you to know, how to conduct a SWOT analysis. So think about SWOT analysis as if you have a big rectangular shape, and then you have a horizontal line and a vertical line. When these two lines intersect, they create 4 quadrants, right? So on the left hand side, you put the opportunities and threats. Opportunities or threats are basically whatever is there in the organization's environment that are sources of opportunities that the organization can build on, or sources of threats that the organization should minimize or counter. On the right hand side, there are 2 quadrants. The top quadrant will be strengths. These are things that the organization do well. Power sources within the organization, right? Like trained faculty members, like financial resources, so on and so forth. And then the bottom right quadrant will be weaknesses. Weaknesses are weak spots within the organization, things that the organization doesn't do as well. So for example, we don't have enough faculty members. We don't have, enough skilled employees in this field. We don't have enough financial resources. Again, these are weaknesses. So again, SWOT analysis is basically an analysis of SWOT. So the first 2 letters are S and W. S is strengths. These are the internal strengths within the organizations. W stands for weaknesses. These are the weaknesses within the organization, things that the organization or resources the organization does not have. And then the O stands for opportunities. It's whatever sources within the external environment of the organization which can help it, or whatever factors in the external environment of the organization which can help it achieve its goals. And then the T stands for threats. These can be competitors. These can be laws which basically hinder the organization from achieving its goals. Again, part of the breakout group I usually do in quote-unquote live classes is actually invite students to draw or to create a SWOT analysis. We will try to do this actually here through our online discussion. And again, I would be very happy to answer questions by email or meet through Skype. So as we said, the stages of strategic planning, the first step is identify the organization's goals, current mission, and strategies. Second is to do a SWOT analysis to understand the strengths and weaknesses within your organization, and then the opportunities and threats within the organization's environment. Following the creation of a SWOT analysis, you start formulating strategies, implement your strategies, and then evaluate results. Okay, so now the first step in the strategic planning process, as we said, is the mission and goals. Know who you are or who you are. Ask yourself who you are. Not you, I mean the organization. What is this organization about? Why are we here? What's the purpose of our existence? For example, the mission statement is usually sort of a broad statement which defines the reason for the organization's existence. So for example, Google might say something like, we are here to transform people's life and draw new ways for people to connect and exchange data and so on and so forth. What else? FEPS, we are here to provide the nation's top politicians and economists and bureaucrats, right? American University in Washington, D.C., where I had my PhD, the mission statement for the School of Public Affairs is producing better bureaucrats since 1974. So again, a mission statement is sort of a broad statement of which states the reason for the organization's existence. The goals are basically the foundation for further planning. These are measurable performance targets. Again, when we speak about goals, the goals have to be quantifiable. The goals have to be stated and written. The goals have to be realistic. So for example, in Egypt National Vision 2030, our goal is to achieve 7% growth rate by 2030. So again, we're time bound and we are realistic because 7% given, Egypt's capabilities and, ongoing reform plans, this is realistic. The goal is written, it's widely shared. So again, understand your mission and goals. This is the first, at least present goals. This is the first step in the strategic planning process. The following step is actually about the SWOT analysis. Again, so usually in a live class, I would, again, do breakout groups and ask students to design, to work on SWOT analyses and then come back and report to the whole class about their findings. So now I just decided to give you an example of how to conduct a SWOT analysis. So as we said, SWOT is an acronym. Acronym is a word composed of the first letter of several other words. So SWOT, S stands for strengths, W weaknesses, O opportunities, and T threats. Okay, so basically it's an analysis of the organization's internal and external environment. Internal environment, you need to understand your strengths and weaknesses. External environment, you need to know your opportunities and threats. So let's take an example, just one example of the several examples we usually discuss in a live class. And this example I mentioned before in our class actually, which is, we live in a region which is full of problems and conflicts in Syria, Iraq, Sudan, Algeria, Tunisia, lots of other places. We have, different kinds of conflicts, Yemen, definitely. And it's really interesting that in lots of universities in, Western countries, you usually have a department for conflict resolution or a school for conflict resolution. It's really interesting that we live in this region with the maximum number of conflicts, but we don't have a department in Egypt, in any university, whether it's AUC, Cairo University, Ain Shams, you name it. We don't have any department or any school where the education and research is totally dedicated to conflict resolution or, peace building or something of that sort. So now I would say the Dean of FAPS decides or is thinking about creating a strategic goal, which is adding a new department to FAPS called Department of International Peace and Conflict Resolution. Okay, now we're thinking about strategic planning. So our first step is to know our mission. So our mission in FAPS is, producing the best politicians, economists, diplomats, bureaucrats ever, for Egypt and the world. So this is our mission. The second step is, if I'm thinking about a strategy for creating this new department, the following step after knowing my mission and stating my mission, the following step is do a SWOT analysis. Okay. Now, putting in mind that we are considering the creation of such a department, the question is, what are my strengths and weaknesses if I want to create this department? Okay, I would say strengths and weaknesses, this is whatever is internal to the organization, the internal to FAPS. So I would say, okay, my strengths, number one, I have very smart and very well-educated faculty members. That's great. In political science department, I have, wonderful professors. Lots of them can teach in a department called International Peace and Conflict Resolution. What else? What are the other sources of strengths I have internally? Internally, I have good faculty members. What else? I have great research assistants. Okay, that's great. This is another strength. What else? Okay, I have a wonderful building. That's another. I have, room for, to host new faculty members. I have enough rooms, whether in FAPS or in El Malab, where we used to have our class at the beginning of the semester. So I have enough rooms. Okay, these are all sources of strengths. These are internal to my organization. Okay, what about the weaknesses? Okay, I would say one weakness is also faculty members. We have wonderful faculty members in the political science department, possibly in the public administration department. However, none of them specializes in international peace and conflict resolution. In other words, faculty members, the professors in the political science department, some of them specialize in Asian political systems, some of them American political systems, some of them specialize in, I don't know, the Arab-Israeli conflict, some of them are comparative political science scholars, so on and so forth. None of us in FAPS, it's sad, but it's almost true. I mean, I haven't done the study, but I would say, I would imagine this is almost true, that we have none, or at least very few faculty members who specialize specifically in international peace and conflict resolution. So that's a weakness. Do you get the idea? The thing, I'm sorry for asking questions. I know we're not meeting face to face, but I'm imagining I'm speaking to someone. Okay, I'm not hallucinating, I'm just imagining. So anyway, so the thing is, strengths and weaknesses are whatever is internal to the organization. And again, you have to think about your strengths and weaknesses before going forward to the following step, the third step in strategic planning, which is designing your strategies. So we have strengths, we have great faculty members, we have good research, wonderful research assistants, we have rooms, we have, lots of, internal strengths. However, we also have weaknesses, which includes that, we just don't have faculty members who specialize specifically in international peace and conflict resolution. So these are the strengths and weaknesses, which basically the source of strengths and weaknesses is the internal, whatever is internal to the organization. Now, the following step is analyze the external environment. So these are the other two letters in SWOT, which are opportunities and threats. What opportunities and threats do I have? Okay, I would say one opportunity is people are interested, right? So people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, again, think about Mr. Samah Shukri, Ambassador Samah Shukri, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He's definitely interested in, having great students who specialize in this field, right? Who specialize in international peace and conflict resolution. Why? Because Samah Shukri, every day, he has to deal with problems between Palestinian factions and the Palestinian-Israeli peace process. And he has to deal with the situation in Syria, the situation in Libya, the situation in Yemen, problems between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So he definitely is interested in, sending some diplomats from the State Department to study, sorry, not from the State Department, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to study in FAPS if we create a new department called International Peace and Conflict Resolution. In other words, we have enough demand. People demand our research in any Department of International Peace and Conflict Resolution. There's demand for research. Also, there's demand for graduates. So this is a great opportunity. What else? Okay, maybe someone like, an organization like the Sawiris Foundation might be interested in giving money to such a department, giving us money so that, Sawiris Foundation, they want to establish peace and promote peace and, so on and so forth. So, okay, FAPS is a great place to do this. We'll give them money. So again, Sawiris Foundation is an external force. So it's, whatever they're inclined to do can be a source of opportunity for us, right? On the other hand, there are some threats in the external environment. Like what? Okay, GAP, Global Affairs and Public Policy School. This is at AUC. It almost does very similar to research, to the kind of research we do in FAPS. They have programs which are very close to the programs we have in FAPS. In other words, GAP at AUC is a potential competitor. Again, competitors lie outside the organization. So that's a sort of threat. That's a source of threat. Do you get the idea? Again, a SWOT analysis is a vertical line intersecting with a horizontal line. They create 4 quadrants. Each of these quadrants, one of them would be strengths, the other quadrant would be weakness, the third quadrant would be opportunities, the fourth would be threats, okay? And again, you have to know your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats before moving forward with the process of strategic planning. So again, the SWOT analysis include first doing an external analysis, which is scanning your environment for factors that present opportunities and other factors or forces which create threats. Internal analysis requires understanding your sources of strength within your own organization, knowing the resources you have, the capabilities you have, the skills and abilities you have within your organization. What can you do best? On the other hand, you also need to understand your weaknesses, the activities that you just don't have within your organization, factors that you need for creating a particular outcome, but you just don't have these factors. These can be human factors, these can be human skills, they can also be certain resources, right? Whatever is absent from your organization, this should be considered a sort of threat. We also think about, when we speak about our strengths, we usually think about the core competencies. These are the organization's major value creating capabilities that determine competitive weapons or competitive advantage. In other words, what are our core competencies in FAPS? First, I think the human resources. We have the best students, We have wonderful professors, you know, and again, these are our core competencies. We know how to produce research. We know how to work together to produce the best research, right? So these are definitely these should be considered to be our core competencies. Okay, now the following step, after stating your mission and after doing a SWOT analysis, the following step is formulate strategies. What is formulating strategies? It's basically developing and evaluating strategic alternatives. So a strategic alternative is speaking about a specific goal and then steps to reach this goal. So for example, we want to contribute to research and teaching in the field of international peace and conflict resolution. So if this is our, you know, strategic goal, how can we achieve this goal? One strategic alternative will be creating a whole department for international peace and conflict resolution. Another strategic alternative can be, instead of creating a department, maybe creating a field within the political science department which focuses on international peace and conflict resolution, right? So these are strategic alternatives. You can create a whole department. Alternatively, you can just encourage certain professors and certain research assistants within the political science department to do more within the field of international peace and conflict resolution. So the first step in formulating strategies is develop strategic alternatives and then select the alternative which you can best achieve based on your SWOT analysis, right? Based on your knowledge of your internal strengths and weaknesses and your knowledge of, you know, the forces within the external environment which can be sources of opportunity or sources of threat. Okay, and then the following step would be to implement the strategy. Again, work on actually engaging in the activities which can lead you to achieve your strategies based on your strategic choice. The final step is evaluate the results. What is evaluating the results? Again, you have your strategic goals. These strategic goals are quantifiable, they're time bound. Your following step is understand, you know, whatever you have, or measure what you have achieved within. Did you achieve whatever you intended to achieve within the specified period of time? Yes or no? Were you able to achieve up to the standards? Yes or no? And again, understand the reasons for, if there's any deviation from the original goal, understand the sources of this deviation. Actually, this was my plan for Tuesday class, is just to, you know, to take you through some exercises about, you know, how to think strategically, how to do a SWOT analysis. Again, I asked the TA, Dr. Sarah, to post the handouts about, you know, sort of the exercises about doing the SWOT analysis. So, and maybe she can also help you, maybe she can create a video or something which can help you through how to do a SWOT analysis. Again, I think this is a very important skill that you have to learn about. Soon enough, hopefully by tomorrow, I will post another video which explains to you how you can write a research paper. Hopefully this will help you through the stages of your final research paper. Again, I understand that it's a bit of a tough time, but I didn't want to deprive you from the opportunity to engage in writing a research paper, engage with other people, and, you know, try to write a real life research paper. Again, I understand it's a difficult situation, but this should not defer us from, or deter us from, making the best use of this course. Thank you for listening, and we'll continue in the coming week with planning. And soon enough, before our coming class, I will post just another video giving you some advice about how to write a final research paper. Thank you very much for your time. Stay safe, and hopefully I will see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.